Today I'm going to show you how to do a power steering flush, and this would pretty much apply to any vehicle as far as I know. I've done it on my Mercedes, I've done it on my Grand Caravan. This would also be the procedure you would go through, for instance, if you replace your power steering rack and you have to completely bleed it out. First thing, you're going to need to find out what type of power steering fluid your vehicle takes. In this case, this is a 2005 Mercedes E-Class. It takes the Petosen CHF11S. My 98 SLK does not take that power steering fluid. Are they that different? Yes, absolutely. Do not put the wrong power steering fluid into your vehicle. I saw one guy who put regular power steering fluid into his 2005 ML. It should have been a CHF. The power steering fluid he put in there was too heavy, and this was after putting a new power steering pump on, and he actually heated up the belt to the point, the serpentine belt, to the point where it melted. So check your manual, check online, find out what the correct power steering fluid is. That's your first step. I'm also, since I'm getting a groaning from my power steering, and I had actually flushed the system out once already, and I'm getting some groaning after that. I'm getting this product called Lubrizol 6178. You get it from your Mercedes dealer or online, and it's specifically for that problem. That is optional, though it seems like it's a protectant, could extend the life of your system. Also, you're going to need a 1 liter water bottle, something to hang that 1 liter water bottle with. You're also going to need your jack to jack the front end of the car up. You're also going to need a little syringe, turkey baster. I have a large syringe in order to get the excess fluid out to start with your out of your reservoir. Alright, now let me talk about the inherent risks of doing this job. Number one is introducing air into the system, which can be a bugger to get out. When the engine's running and it's under pressure, the air seems like it doesn't want to leave. But I'll be showing you the bleeding process, the proper bleeding process on this. That would hopefully get it cleared up for you if you do. It is easier or better if you do it as a two-person job. One person monitors the fluid level in the reservoir while the other person is turning the steering wheel to do the bleeding. The second issue, which I actually kind of experienced on my Grand Caravan, is the old fluid has moisture in it, the old fluid has dirt in it, it's broken down, and the qualities of hydraulic fluid is that it can't be compressed. Well, old worn out fluid can be compressed, and so what you wind up with is steering that's not quite as responsive. When you change the fluid, you may or may not find that your steering is much more responsive, much softer and easier. But with that higher pressure, you also run the risk that if your seals are failing, it could start leaking, and that's actually what happened with my Grand Caravan. I put in some sealant that you just pour into the reservoir. Fortunately, that did the trick, cleared it right up. But I just wanted to give you guys a warning. If your power steering is in poor shape, if you're getting a little leakage, a good chance that leakage will get worse if you change the fluid. Okay, first you want to get your wheels up in the air, dangling, and then you're going to take remove the cap from your reservoir, and I'm going to use a syringe to get all the fluid out of the reservoir. I'll throw it into that little cup there, and you got to mainly get it below the return hose, because we're going to be unplugging that. If you unplug it right now, fluid's just going to drain out. So get your reservoir emptied as the first step. Okay, I got my fluid all drained out. and work cleanly. You notice towels, paper towels there. Transmission, hydraulic fluid, transmission fluid, brake fluid, etc. can be corrosive to the paint, so work clean. Okay, for this particular vehicle, I removed the air duct to give me some room, and there's a little pocket down in there. You can see that I dropped my water bottle down through that pocket. It has to be below the tube here that comes out of your reservoir. That's the return. That's where your power steering fluid returns to the reservoir. It has to be below that point. I have my wire hanging it. Depends on the vehicles. Grand Caravan, obviously I've got a lot of room to work with on the Grand Caravan, less room on this. Also, keep your cap handy, because before you go to remove that bottle when you're done, put the cap on. You don't want to spill a whole liter of power steering all over your garage floor, all over the engine, etc. Okay, now that the reservoir is empty, you want to unclamp this hose and flip it over into the opening of our collection bottle. Okay, now you can see I have my return line stuck into the opening of my collection bottle. And now I've grabbed my little packet of plastic caps that I picked up at AutoZone or wherever, and we're going to put it right over top of the spout where the hose was to block that off, just like that. Okay, now that that's done, I'll take my funnel. I'm going to fill the reservoir up to the top, actually probably overfilled, and then I am going to get into the vehicle and turn the steering wheel from the far left to the far right, back and forth, always getting out of the car, checking my fluid level, topping it off until I get down to about a quarter of a can, and then I'm going to stop. And at that point you have to actually get fluid out of the reservoir again with your syringe, just so you can take this cap off without it all pouring out. But you don't have to go all the way down to the bottom for that. And this is where two people comes in handy, not only for monitoring the reservoir, also because since you're handling fluid and then handling the steering wheel, you run the risk of getting power steering fluid onto your steering wheel, which you really want to avoid. Okay, now as you turn the wheel, you're going to be forcing fluid through all the different chambers of the power steering rack, etc., and up and into the collection bottle. If you notice, I don't know if you can see it, but it's dripping a little bit. You can't really gravity bleed it the way you could with sometimes on your brakes, but you can leave it drip like that in order to get down below the reservoir, so you can the returns, so that you can put the hose back on without it dripping all over the place. But if you notice, it's a very slow process that could take days. You will also need the key in the on position in order to turn the steering wheel back and forth. Now here's the fluid that I just took out of the car. It's from, it's probably about 7,000 miles on it. It's probably not actually as bad as it looks on camera. It's still green, you can still see through it. When you have it in a smaller cup, you can see the difference there, or it's close to brand new. Now let's have a look at what I drained out of it 7,000 miles ago, the 100,000 mile fluid. And this is my initial flush of the power steering fluid. So you can see, and it looks like it's darker than Coca-Cola. Should be transparent green. I'll show you a sample of the new fluid. Okay, I was just real careful about watching my fluid level until I guesstimated I was just below this hose, and then I put a paper towel under it, pulled the plug off, and it didn't drip. Reattached my hose. Now I'm going to cap off my bottle and shimmy it out of that little pocket there. I'm going to refill my reservoir to the 20-degree full mark, 20 degrees Celsius full mark that's on the dipstick. Then, without starting the engine, with the front wheels in the air, I am going to turn the wheel back and forth probably at least 30 complete cycles. I think it might be 38 is what they recommend. I don't recall. Maybe I'll go as far as 50. And if you wind up with air in your system, you stop the car, you jack up the front end, you do it again. That's how you get the air out of the system. Because when the system's under pressure, that little air bubble is going to be compressed, and it's just going to compress and expand and compress and expand as the pressure changes within your power steering rack. But it won't leave. So this is how you get air out of it. Okay, I drove the car, got it up to operating temperature, and with this second bleed, as opposed to my first bleed, which I think I managed to get air into it, I ran the reservoir a little too dry. I had groaning out of it. Now 90% of the groaning is gone. I mean, it's just barely there. I'm going to add the Lubrizol just to get rid of the remaining groan, hopefully. And here's a hint with it. When you get it, you may see that it has like sediment in the bottom, and the instructions tell you to shake it up real good. And the sediment just kind of breaks up, floats around in there, but it also introduces loads of air. So it's like, you know, it's just almost foamy in there. So what I did was this little spot right here, after the engine, with the engine hot, I just sat it there. And what it did is it liquefied the Lubrizol. The bubbles all precipitated out of it, and the sediment, the precipitate that was in there, redissolved into the oil. So now I just have clear, clean oil again to add into there. So that's a little hint for you, because I was really concerned about introducing all that foamy air from the Lubrizol into the steering. Okay, now for adding the Lubrizol, it's a 50 milliliter bottle. The instructions tell you to suction 50 milliliters out with the engine at operating temperature, and then add your bottle into the reservoir. And then there's a procedure very similar to the bleeding that you do in order to distribute it and get the lubricant actually where it belongs. And then it also tells you to put a yellow dot onto the reservoir, as well as down on the power steering gear, which next time I do my oil change, I'll do that to it, just because this is a one-shot deal. Once you add it, you can't add it again. I suspect if you do a complete flush of your steering system like I did, it shouldn't be a problem. But, you know, put a marker on there just so you know, just so everybody else knows. Okay, I'm all done. Lubrizol is in, and the fluid flush gets a passing grade. I noticed a big difference in both the feel, the sound, and everything once it was done properly. Lubrizol, on the other hand, jury's out to possibly failing grade. I really didn't notice any benefit, and in fact, I thought the power steering was quieter, had less groan before I put the Lubrizol in. So maybe the Lubrizol just kind of helps with worn fluid. I don't know. But personally, I was happier with just the fluid change by itself. So I hope you found this video helpful. If so, please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time. Okay, now let me cover the inherent risks of doing this job. Number one is introducing water, or start over.